I bring a new geographic perspective to the program. I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the week of July 28th, and I am Eric Planey.
Hello, I'm Lucas Finko.
And our special guest for the third week in a row is, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathryn Valdez.
And welcome, Kathryn. And the three of us are this week's Pirates of Clean Tech.
Yarg!
Arg.
Arg!
The ARG doesn't work, but we do it every week. I don't know why. Kathryn, you just totally blew past the ARG. You didn't do it for us.
I hesitated, and then I thought it was too late.
All right, you get a chance at the end of the show. Don't worry.
All right.
So this is episode 8 for us, and we want to say thank you to all our subscribers, our viewers, both in the world of YouTube and also on our podcast platforms. The feedback over the last couple of weeks has been absolutely tremendous, especially since Lucas and I took it to the next level and started having guest hosts along with us. And we just appreciate that. And Lucas, you want to talk a little bit about people subscribing and what they can do with our podcast?
Yeah, sure. So you can subscribe to the podcast, at least on YouTube. You click the little alarm bell, and then you'll get a notification whenever we post a video every week. So you'll be the first to get it. I know last week we had some articles that I then saw on the news 3 days later. So if you want to be in the know, you definitely want to be alerted when ours come out. Always hit like for us. That helps us out, lets us know that you like our content. And then comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or comments. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear ideas about what you want to hear about, who you want to see on the show. We're going to have some more cool guests on, so we're looking forward to that. And yeah, thanks for listening, and let us know if there's anything you'd like to see.
Yeah, thanks, Lucas. And again, we're also on Twitter at Clean Pirates. You could be our 7th follower if you sign up soon. So the numbers just keep growing exponentially. We always like to say this is a casual conversation among great friends, and it always proves to be the case, as if we're all in a pub hanging out. And that's why I'm doing a shameless plug, even though they're not sponsoring me. Angry Orchard Cider, Hudson Valley Brewed.
Yeah, and I'm drinking Great Lakes Brewing today, Edmund Fitzgerald Porter, which is excellent.
Fantastic. Kathryn?
Cheers with the Hogarten over here.
We kind of represent different tastes, different varieties, different parts of the world. Fantastic. Well, when I think of Kathryn Valdez, I'm happy to say that we go way back several years now and just have had such a great friendship and rapport. And the two things that come to mind with Kathryn, or the one word, is names. Because one thing great about Kathryn, when you look at her bio, she went to the coolest named undergraduate university in the United States. And she has the coolest name consulting firm, and we'll talk about that old school sounding consulting firm and where the name came from. But Kathryn, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing and why you decided to go down that route?
Absolutely. Thanks. Well, first, thanks for inviting me to participate with you guys today. This is my first time on a podcast, so I appreciate it. And with a pirate theme, I did take some time over the weekend to watch the first Pirates of the Caribbean with my kids, and was like really worried about what I was going to wear and the costumes that I would be required to have for today. But happy to see that we didn't go all the way through with the theme. The thing that in that first movie, which many of you saw a long time ago, is they talk about the pirate code, where it's every pirate for themselves and you leave any pirate behind. And so but they continue to break that code. That's sort of the theme of the movie, the soft side. And so I sure hope that happens in this clean tech revolution, that we're not leaving anyone behind. So no pirate code here. We'll follow Jack Sparrow's lead on that one. So yeah, as I introduce myself, I'm Kathryn Valdez, and I bring a new geographic perspective to the program. I'm in Denver, Colorado, so happy to represent the Mountain West here a little bit with you gentlemen today. My background was for many years on the electric and gas utility side of things. I worked for Xcel Energy and supported them in operations, in environmental strategy, in technology strategy, and eventually in some strategic planning functions. And the technology strategy was really fun and exciting to me. And sometimes I got a little bit ahead of perhaps where the company could go for many reasons as a large regulated entity. And so I decided after a decade or more there that I would leave and pursue supporting utility technology deployment independently. And I started Mapleton and Sloan Energy Advisors, and for the last several years have been successfully doing that. Last 2 years, I've worked a lot on transportation electrification, and that's probably the area that gets me the most excited. It's fun being in Colorado and supporting EVs right now. Xcel Energy here has a $100 million EV plan pending, so that will really get things going here. And the state and the governor are making big commitments to electrify Colorado's transportation. So I hope to keep working and pushing that along. But all sorts of utility tech, demand side management, drone use for asset inspection, anything like that is awesome to me. And I like solving problems with solutions that are going to offer a lot of value to the customer and to the utility. So I'll keep doing that. And I look forward to sharing that perspective as we bounce these articles around.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Kathryn. You've always been a bit of a role model to me, the way that you've kind of steered your career and always been on the cutting edge. And you forced me to have conversations about new technologies that weren't on my radar. And so I really appreciate that. Talk a little bit, I guess maybe my first question is, you mentioned the fact you're in Colorado, Mountain State. Yep. You know, while we feel good about the accomplishments on the East Coast, particularly with New York and NYSERDA and kind of driving the bus on next generation clean technology, the role models really have always been California and Colorado. So talk a little bit about the ecosystem there, because politically it's an interesting state, right? Because it's a blue-red state, right? Denver being blue, but sometimes the state being red. But there seems to be a willingness by all invested parties to really go down the sustainability and clean tech path. How is that ecosystem? How did it develop organically? And what has been the end game or the end result thus far in terms of technology incubation and policy?
Sure. Yeah. Though I think that you're right about Colorado's politics evolving and sometimes being, you know, purplish, but maybe even less purple and more blue as time goes on. But I think that clean tech has always been big here, just because tech is big here. It's, you know, with the university system here and the University of Colorado, and then several national labs. The National Renewable Energy Lab is in Golden. It just brings a lot of people to the state that are focused on that type of technology and solving those problems, and then also bring a lifestyle, you know, chose Colorado or want to be here because it meets their lifestyle goals, and they like what the sunny West here in the mountains offer. So I think they kind of are looking for things that protect their lifestyle and support the, you know, the technology. So the engineering and clean tech development and associations and industries and networks here are real for sure.
Fantastic. Lucas, any
Well, oh no, we lost you, Lucas.
Sorry, I know very little about Colorado and their energy policy, so I noticed that they are a big producer of energy for the U.S. I just noticed on the EIA today, and a lot of that comes from the fracking, I believe, oil and gas. The Niobrara is there, so I think there's been a good story there. But you know, we all know shale has its complications, so interested to see they're also a big solar producer. So it's good. I see good things there. Yeah.
It's definitely a kind of a state that embodies the energy transition challenges. I plugged University of Colorado because it's bigger, but my alma mater that Eric alluded to is the Colorado School of Mines. So it's a big engineering school, obviously founded for mining technology, but now has a world-renowned petroleum engineering department, and then along with engineering of all disciplines. But yeah, Colorado's complicated. Its population has really grown. I'm a native, and it definitely looks different than it did when I grew up here. There's a lot more people. So it's always been an oil and gas state, but now the people are where the oil and gas is. And so it's hard, you know, they're not great neighbors. And so I think that those challenges will will just continue here. But hopefully they can figure out ways to work together.
No, it's fantastic. How's it been going out on your own? Can you just give us maybe a couple examples of where you've had days where you feel so glad that you made the jump on your own, and then maybe an example or two where you just say to yourself, what am I getting myself into?
Absolutely. Well, it's satisfying to believe in a technology and really help a company understand it and deploy it. But it's also lonely at times. I'm a small boutique firm, and most of my work, if I need more resources, I'm doing through partnerships, but then it's never quite the same team dynamic. So I'd say those are the days where I wish I had more people to celebrate success with. The days that you're winning work and using those partnerships and those relationships to grow and help is very satisfying.
Well, so then that leads to the question, when you told me, or when I found out that you were going out on your own, I really thought that you had acquired some sort of 200-year-old consulting firm, because a name like Mapleton and Sloan conveys smoking rooms and, smoking jackets and people's, chomping on cigars and talking about the events. Where did you get the name Mapleton and Sloan?
Sure. Well, it's actually great. And it served me very well. My husband and I came up with it. So Mapleton Hill is the area where I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and Sloan's Lake is the neighborhood where my husband grew up in Denver. So Mapleton and Sloan LLC. And it's been really nice because a lot of people I know that have also ventured out on their own and have some, unique expertise that they are now offering to the marketplace. I could have been Valdez Advisors, but that would have been too obvious. So this definitely helps. Some assume I'm an attorney, and that's fine. You want to assume whatever you want. So it just was kind of fun, and it's two places that are special to us. So went with it.
Excellent. It's excellent. Oh, Lucas?
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Well, I think with that, why don't we start diving into the headlines? We're definitely, I think, hitting a little bit of the summer ball. There's not as much activity in the media regarding clean tech and sustainability than a few weeks ago, but nonetheless, I think we did some digging and found some pretty interesting stuff. So should we start with our guest of honor, Kathryn?
Sure. Perfect. Okay, this is my first shared headline. NextEra Energy to build its first green hydrogen plant in Florida. Published July 24th by Carl Eric Stromstad in Green Tech Media, found it on greentechmedia.com. So in summary, NextEra through Florida Power and Light has proposed $65 million, 20 megawatt electrolyzer that will produce green hydrogen from their solar facilities and then use that hydrogen in one of their gas power plants. And I think it's really exciting because I think we're going to need this hydrogen solution as the renewable generation in this country just continues to grow, and as a way to get it to align with the demand. And so I think it's great. And I feel like so much of my business is really focused on things that were a little bit academic, but now I really want to see them deployed. And I like that deployment stage. So I feel like this is a pretty sizable pilot program. I like it for wind integration in Colorado and in Minnesota and the Midwest. I think it could help nuclear. So if they can successfully produce their green hydrogen and control when it's done, I think it offers great promise and gets it on this side of the pond. Most of the developments I've seen here have been in Europe.
Yeah, this is great. This is exactly what we want the hydrogen revolution to be about. Notice that they point out that today fossil fuels is mainly used as the feedstock. That would be natural gas, I believe, is the main source for hydrogen today. But if we could get into electrolysis of water using green, clean, renewable energy, that would be fantastic. And the cool thing about that too is when you then quote unquote burn hydrogen, it just reacts with oxygen. You get water as the waste product, which is perfectly fine with me. But I didn't know you could do this. Can you actually just take a natural gas turbine and put hydrogen and burn hydrogen in it? I mean, you can't even put leaded gas in your unleaded gasoline car. I mean, you can't put diesel in there. You just can't switch fuels. And, your output's going to be steam. So I'm pretty sure they're not prepared to, are they going to put steam up the smokestack? I don't know. I didn't know this was feasible. So this is interesting to me.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. I kind of wondered because obviously when you talk about fuel cell vehicles and you talk about the fact that the exhaust, if you will, is water vapor, right, which is incredibly green, does that same type of functionality happen when you inject into a gas turbine system? Are you combining it as a bit of an additive? I did reading on some technology in a different article where injecting technology into, vehicle engines, hydrogen technology, can result in lower overall emissions from the source fuel that's being used at the moment. But it's complicated for me. And so if anyone who's listening wants to react either on our podcast or on our YouTube page and give us a download of what their thinking is, I'd be happy to see that. But to Kathryn's point, I think we're all very excited about this. We need different sources of green energy. I like the fact that they're talking about it truly is going to be green hydrogen because the power to produce it is going to come from green sources. It just goes that much deeper into the supply chain. And, we're talking more about green inputs into green systems. And I think that's what really creates kind of a holistic solution for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, this is great. We really like this.
I know I had read that there's definitely some turbine manufacturers that are working on how their turbines can use increasing concentrations of hydrogen. So yeah, it'd be great to learn a little bit more about what can these turbines do today? What kind of blend can they actually use with hydrogen and gas?
Yeah, well, because I think, in the pure chemical form, if you burn natural gas, you get water and CO2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're already used to handling water. I mean, they often show those smokestacks with all this quote unquote smoke blowing off the top, but it's white, it's steam, it's not smoke, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, look at this pollution. It's like, wait a minute, it's just CO2 and water. I mean, so I guess maybe they can. This is really interesting.
And, we try to avoid shameless plugs where possible, but I think we do have to give credit to NextEra. NextEra always seems to be on the forefront of technology development, green technology development that brings, the cost of development down so that it becomes market driven and not, something that's government subsidized. So once again, we see NextEra in this article as the leader developing this green hydrogen plant. So strong move on their part.
Yeah, and I know FP&L has been huge on natural gas generation in the last few years. So this is a good sign.
Right.
For sure.
Excellent. All right,
cool. Well,
the next one.
Move on.
All right, so this one, the title, EDF builds integrated solar EV hub. This is from renews.biz on July 22nd, but I don't have an author tagline on this one that I could find. But in summary, EDF Renewables is going to design, build, and operate a system that integrates carport solar, battery storage, and EV charging. And it's a 847 kilowatt solar, 800 kilowatt battery storage, and 50 EV charging stations. And I love it because, like I said, it's really taking what was sort of understood as an academic solution. Let's put these three things together. We can help utilities manage the demand of these stations. We can help the users of these stations manage their demand charges. But this is a pretty good size installation. So I was excited to see it because it's time to put some of this stuff on the ground and help utilities across the country understand how this works.
Yeah, I was super happy about this, mainly because I've been asking for this what seems like years, maybe only a year or two, but it seems like years. It just seems like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I see these parking lots with solar panels, no EV chargers. What? I mean, come on, really? It just seems obvious. So I'm so happy to see this, that somebody finally put solar and battery and EV chargers together. But on the other hand, I'm like extremely angry. Like, it's so obvious. Why haven't we been doing this for the past 5, 10 years? I mean, come on, people. So I definitely want to see more of this. This is fantastic.
Well, I mean, I remember, Lucas, I think one of our very first episodes, you talked about this actually being something that needs to be developed more of, and we hadn't seen it just yet. I guess my thought is, it was great to put solar panels on these carport rooftops, but the battery tech wasn't just there yet. The storage tech wasn't there. The pricing wasn't there. So finally, battery pricing is getting economical enough where this starts becoming economical. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second consideration is, I'm sure we've all seen those maps over the years that talk about how green is your electric vehicle. And it's all based upon the power generation of the state that you live in. So I think this will actually propel public perception of EVs being truly green, because people are going to see very visibly that the carport that you park at is generating solar power to plug into your car. So you truly have a solar powered vehicle. I think that'll just further the great perception how green and clean EVs are. And with battery costs continuing to come down, you're going to see more of these prolifically deployed throughout the United States. So a great story. Totally agree with that.
Yeah, we have to give props to EDF. EDF has kind of been in the leader with all this. So they have a great R&D facility now in Silicon Valley. At least they were opening one. I don't know how that went. So thanks to EDF.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. What's up next?
Cool.
All right. This is my third article. 8 cities share how racial justice is embedded into their climate plans, from greenbiz.com by Jesse Klein on July 20th. And this one I picked because I felt it followed well through your pirate series here. I know you've been discussing this issue a little bit. And so in summary, Jesse interviewed 8 municipal leaders about how they see the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on their minority populations, as well as the simultaneous protests for racial justice. And do they see any benefits or any thoughts about this portrayed in their sustainability plans for their areas? So it's a complicated question, and I don't think they were necessarily developing their sustainability plans to answer that, right? But now it's one of the first questions that's going to come up. And so I thought it was an interesting take and to reflect on these large metropolitan areas. To me, it showed that there are benefits in these plans, but that they can do more. For me, working so hard on transportation electrification, bringing access and equity into that is a real challenge, and something that I don't think is solved. There isn't a great solution yet. And I think part of that is that you're looking at solutions, a big utility, a big entity wants to come up with a solution and then deploy it across, their footprint. But these are problems that are so narrow and specific in their areas and in their impacts. So I feel like it's hard to do. But a few solutions that she profiled that I liked were around intentional hiring and workforce development and how that comes into their sustainability plans, linking improvements and efficiency improvements in buildings with health benefits for residents as a way to further develop their programs. And then the tree canopy. 2 of the cities talked about tree canopies and their benefits to health and reducing the heat island impact in some of these areas. And I'm a big proponent of trees as a environmental solution. So I was happy to see that in any metropolitan area. It's so important. And the one that I found on EVs really stood out, and it was mentioned in the Los Angeles city summary, was really looking at what communities are always supported last, but then support them first as you start to deploy investment in programs. And I thought that was really good advice, because I think most people living in a large metro area could probably identify the area that's always picked last. So reprioritizing that would have a disproportionately beneficial impact.
Yeah, I absolutely love this story, and thank you for picking it in the context of trying to continue the conversation that we've been having over this series. The couple things I really liked about this is, once again, it further validates the fact that, especially in the United States, when on the federal level over the last couple of years, there has not been a push for green energy and sustainability that the governors and the mayors took it upon themselves to keep the agenda going forward. And you're absolutely right. Some of the biggest impacts on carbon is the carbon society, creating more carbon in the air and the atmosphere, has been in urban environments, and it's affected everything from resiliency to jobs to people's health. And my favorite example was when Seoul, South Korea, in the early 2000s, tore down one of their overhead highways that was covering up a natural river, and they reinstalled the river, and they had to use some pumps. But one of the immediate impacts was the core temperature in Seoul in peak summer was down 3 degrees because of the fact that they decided to run a river right through it, or kind of re-expose the river back into the ecosystem of the city. So these are great. I really like this article because it just didn't talk about the big 3 metropolitan areas, but also talked about smaller cities taking on initiatives. And the theme is the same among all cities. What can we do to become more sustainable? But the solutions are all custom tailored for what's practical for that city, what's easy to implement, what resources they have. So everything from bikeways to tree canopies, as you mentioned, is mentioned here. And I absolutely think that's the way to approach it. Custom solutions that lead to the same result, which is decarbonization.
Yeah, I also love this article. This is great to see that a lot of thought and consideration is being put into what to do and how to move forward and how to solve kind of 2 problems at the same time, 2 birds with 1 stone, which is always good. I just wanted to key on this one that I found most interesting, which I love to talk about. This is, environmentalism is one issue where the far left and the far right actually agree. They're in the same place. The first environmentalists were actually, far right Republicans. They were hunters and fishermen, and they wanted to conserve these natural lands for the future. So, they mentioned Teddy Roosevelt was like the biggest environmentalist we've had in this country, and he was a far right staunch Republican. So this is one issue where we can all agree that, environmentalism and conservationism is a good idea, and we need to push this forward because it's not a left, right, red, blue issue. Everybody wants this, so we should be moving ahead.
I suspect Kathryn in Colorado, probably Teddy Roosevelt is well revered because of just all the phenomenal national parks within like hours drives of Denver.
Yeah, protecting wildlands is a big priority here for sure.
Well, also Bureau of Land Management issues, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we won't go there.
No. We high level here. No, well done, Kathryn. Great stories, and really appreciate them bringing them to us. All right, yeah. So I think it's my turn now. So thanks, Lucas. I picked this story out of BBC's Future Planet series, and titled, of course, The Most Powerful Renewable Energy. I don't think there's a date associated with it, but it just talks about hydropower and water power being one of the largest renewable source on the earth right now. And it spells it out exactly on the top that we've reached a hydropower capacity of 1,308 gigawatts or gigawatts. I like to say gigawatts because of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
What is it? 1.0 gigawatts.
1.21 gigawatts.
1.21. That should be a drinking game. If you don't know the number, you have to drink.
Rick.
But what I liked about this story were a couple things. One, of course, is the fact that this isn't coming from Green Tech Media or Clean Tech Media, but this is the BBC, which has much more viewership among the average human being, the average person, and they're focusing on this because society is focusing on this. So that was my first big picture. The second, what I liked about this is we're talking about the fact that hydropower and water generation for a source of electricity was prevalent for decades upon decades, but didn't take into consideration the environmental impacts of creating all these dams for power generation. And we all know that there's, the local fish and wildlife had definitely had a negative impact. And one of the solutions they're talking about is to use hydropower going forward. You must take a more holistic approach towards installing that system. And it simply, cannot be used simply for power, but has to be used for also, climate reaction, right? So, future hydro systems being installed are not just going to be there for power generation, but can actually be diversified into different areas like flood control, irrigation, and drought mitigation. So I think that's great because we need these reactions to the climate crisis that we've created and the weather volatility that we've created. And the other one is just getting a little bit more practical. There's a Bill Gates funded company that's mentioned in here that is, I think, called Natal Energy. And they're working on turbine blades that are going to be that much more fish friendly, because in the current systems in place, fish really get destroyed, unfortunately. And so the fish ecosystems are really, really damaged and harmed. So by putting kind of blades that have a little bit more blunt edges to them, you really kind of give fish a chance to survive. And so you're creating a much better ecosystem. So again, I picked the story because I like the fact that it's BBC getting it out there to a much wider audience. And I like the fact that we're once again, not just looking at the practical solution of water as a source of power generation, but we're starting to look deeper into both the supply chain and the impact of that system. And we're going to have solutions that preserve and protect the environment around it. And so that's why I picked it. I thought it was a great story, and curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, Kathryn, did you have any thoughts?
Well, my family is avid fly fisher family, so definitely interested in solutions that are beneficial to the fish, for sure. So I thought it was really interesting. I think hydro has so many benefits, and I don't think eliminating it is going to happen. It's needed around the whole world. So if you can use it with multiple benefits, but have a more animal and wildlife friendly solution, I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree, and I really like the tech in the new turbines that they talked about. So that's really good. That improves fish survivability. And the other thing which I found on the very bottom was to create smaller ponds and wetlands. So one of the big issues is these giant hydropower projects with these huge reservoirs. They destroy vast areas of wildlife and ecosystems, and sometimes even drown out little towns. Like they have to move little towns. There was a horror movie about such a story, which I'm sure Eric remembers. Was it Deliverance? I think it was Deliverance, right? Where they were going to flood the whole valley and everybody had to get out and they got stuck.
I never saw Deliverance.
Oh, it's crazy. Okay, so we don't want any more horror movies about hydropower, right? So this is great, and then this turbine looks small, right? So you don't have to have this at the Hoover Dam. You can have a relatively small pond and run this, and so that's another good advantage of this. And it plays into distributed too, right? You can distribute these all over the place. You don't need huge transmission lines because you can be near customers that would use the power. And then they're great because they have a reservoir, so you can run it when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. So it's adjunct to solar wind, and it creates a real renewable ecosystem.
Yeah, and to that point, we've seen some articles over the years that talk about tidal energy. And when people talk about tidal, they normally talk about ocean tidal, right? And kind of taking advantage of that. But that's kind of transferred, if you will, to even river current technology, where you can put microturbines that are very harmless to the environment around you, and you can take advantage of the power generated by sustainable river currents. And again, all the above solutions are going to help us prevent our 2-degree increase by 2050. So I like this story a lot. It just touched a lot of positive points, and glad you guys were able to confirm that. So I think with that, let's go to one that upset me a little bit. And obviously this is just breaking over the last couple of days, but the granddaddy of them all, Tesla, is suing upstart EV manufacturer Rivian over disturbing pattern of alleged trade secret theft. And this is coming out of The Verge, and I think Sean O'Kane, dated July 23rd. Well, now obviously we can't I don't think it's appropriate for us to get too far into this because this is just breaking. And of course, this is going to have to play out in the justice system. But Tesla is saying that some key members of their staff left the company and went over to Rivian, and that happens all the time among automotive executives in any industry, really. But it's reporting that there seems to be a systematic approach where people are taking tradecraft secrets, taking process secrets, HR processes for Tesla and transferring them over to Rivian. Again, at least we saw, there's a great quote I think Lucas just passed where, Rivian does pay homage to Tesla for everything it's done. So they're saying the right things right now, and they're also saying that these claims are somewhat baseless. I guess the reason I want to bring this up was again, we have to let this play out in the court system. We have no inside information to tell us who's right and who's wrong in this. But Kathryn kind of mentioned this a little bit about kind of the Pirates Code. I think there is a code that needs to be more of a higher standard in clean tech than just about any other industry. So people, of course, are going to migrate from one clean tech and sustainability company to another. But for anyone to take trade secrets from one company to another, really, I think we have to double down on the shaming of those people through, legal means. But also, I want to hold people in the clean tech industry to a much higher standard. A lot of people are in this like any other job for the money and for the, well-being for they and their families. But I think a lot of us really love this industry because we're doing something for the betterment of society, and not just in the United States but globally. So I really hope that this is a one and done, where we don't see infighting over intellectual property rights being stolen from one incredible automotive EV startup to another one. We need more of these. We need to challenge the large OEMs. Not that I have anything against the OEMs, but I think competition is healthy and good. And I just don't want to see this in the future. So I wanted to bring it up because I think there's an ethical issue that we need to talk about further. It's our, here at Pirates of Clean Tech, we really want to promote, diversity in the workforce. We want to promote all the ethical things that were neglected by large industry in different industries over the years. And I just want to see us being held to a higher standard in clean tech. Kathryn, what do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I thought it was sad too, but also interesting that at least all the 4 or so examples that Tesla cites are all, like you mentioned, in the HR area. So that was interesting to me because it seems like Rivian could have gotten some help, in growing and hiring for its workforce from tech recruiters and whatnot, outside of needing to potentially, go this route if this is what really happened, or that these employees felt like they had to, they couldn't just use their brains to come up with the process. It had to be taken. So if this plays out as true, it's quite interesting that it never would have crossed my mind that even an HR process would be unique to a electric vehicle startup.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And, Kathryn and I probably know this really well as consultants. If you hire me to do work for you, that's your work. That's not my work. I don't own that, you do, right? So I take that attitude with the clients that I work with. And I actually find too that even if I stole code and tried to use it somewhere else, it wouldn't work. So I'd have to rewrite it anyhow. So the whole concept just doesn't make any sense to me. You can't take this over and then reuse it. You'd have to rework it anyhow. I mean, unless it's like, they talked about, there was one executive they were recruiting. Okay, so maybe that's the case, but I mean, I think, like you said, in the car industry, everybody kind of knows who the strong executives are, and people constantly fight over those. So, yeah, to me, it's not just an ethical issue; it's just a common sense issue. Like, there's no point in doing it; it doesn't give you any advantage. So, definitely think that ethics and morals are there because they make sense, and it's I tend to not be ethical or moral because of some greater thing, and just do it because it doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, no, agreed. There's practical solutions to all of this, but I just really want to point it out. We try to always find uplifting stories, but this one disturbed me enough that I think it had to be. We're watching people. We're going to watch people and make sure they're held to the highest standards possible. So let's continue that.
Okay.
All right. So my third article, this kind of goes back maybe to our early weeks where we talked a little bit more about ESG. And again, we're trying to maybe look at it from the investor perspective. We want to hit as many articles that are about policy, about technical aspects of clean tech, but also we want to talk about it from a business and investor standpoint. This is coming from Bloomberg Green, Emily Chasson on July 24th. And it's, you can find this on a couple venues like Yahoo, I think also has it. Mutual fund industry tries to figure out how to define ESG funds. Pretty simple article, but I really like this because prior to the COVID crisis, if you recall, earlier this year in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum, the hot topic in the global media was ESG, and that ESG is here to stay. For those of you that don't know, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it's kind of an all-encompassing definition to help companies, create higher standards in sustainability, and also for asset managers to create an ESG platform so people can feel that they're investing in something that satisfies a higher order of social good, and in turn potentially causes higher returns for that investor. But the definition right now is very vague and it's very unwieldy, and I think that in the long run will actually harm investing and harm the green movement if people just start tacking on ESG to just about everything. It reminds me of like using the word organic a couple years ago. You can throw organic on anything and it was really an unregulated word. And I think the FDA and other sources are stepping in to make sure people understand what truly is organic on the food. So what I like this was an organization called the Investment Company Institute. It's kind of the trade group for US mutual funds. They're taking it upon themselves, along I think with some others, to create better definitions. And I like that because they're talking, if you go down the table right there, you'll see things like ESG exclusionary, which means companies or sectors that do not meet certain sustainability criteria, like fossil fuels, weapons, are excluded from a particular mutual fund or some sort of asset. ESG inclusionary will talk about the positive sustainable outcomes by tilting a portfolio towards these social good factors. These are low carbon, gender diverse, environmentally friendly type companies, or companies that have a focus on it. So they're actually included in that particular mutual fund or that ETF. And then the last one is impact investing, which I think people use interchangeably with ESG. I get confused myself, but impact is generally in this definition by this Investment Company Institute, talks about generating a positive, measurable, and reportable social environmental impact along with that financial return. And this is more about green bonds, et cetera. So I like this because I think this is essential to really get these definitions ironed out and adopted industry-wide among asset managers as soon as possible. This way people have a little bit more conviction to invest in ESG and they know what they're getting from it, so that people won't feel a couple years after doing so that they're being duped. They really know what they're investing in, and I think that will lead to investor protection down the road, should lead to even higher ESG returns vis-a-vis the rest of the market, which we're starting to see during this COVID crisis. And it just gives a sense of completion that the investor community is matching up with the progress being made by the corporate sector and the technology sector on sustainability. I really like this article. I'm happy to see it. Much better than the last one where people are pirating information off each other illegally. So, Kathryn, what do you think?
Yes, having worked on the Carbon Disclosure Project and submitting those types of reports in the past, and the Dow Jones Sustainability Index years and years ago, it was always hard to know, how is that really used? How is that used by an investor? There's a score. Are these funds using that score? Is this going to get more quantitative, where even in the inclusionary category, there's a number metric that has to be met? So I think there's even more to do with this, but I agree, it is confusing. It's easy to splash, words about sustainability around things. At the same time, I think ESG is near and dear to many oil and gas executives that I know. Having been to a big oil and gas university, I have many friends that are climbing into the leadership ranks in oil and gas. So it's interesting how important it is to them too, but then how will they fare in some of these evaluations? So it is really important, but I feel like these three categories are too simple.
Yeah.
Oh.
Lucas?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of ESG, but I have the same concerns that Kathryn talked about, like how do you measure it? How do you define it? And who gets included and why? And so this is great to see some definitions being applied. I love the concept of ESG. Like, again, they seem like no-brainers to me. Like, what CEO wants to say they don't have good governance?
Right.
What CEO wants to say their business is not sustainable? Do you want to own a stock from a company where the CEO says the company's not sustainable? No, I don't. Why would you buy that stock? It doesn't make any sense. So if anything, this is like a giant guilt trip for CEOs. Like, if your company doesn't have good governance and sustainability, let alone environmentalism. Environmentalism is kind of a much more subjective topic, but how can your business not be sustainable and have good governance? Like, you have to get your act together, CEOs, and get on one of these lists, because otherwise, why would people invest in your company?
And I agree, and I agree with Kathryn's point. These are too simple, but I think it is a good starting point. I think the one thing is, as an example, let's talk about green bonds for a second. I think half of corporate America over the last 10 years issued green bonds, or the firms that did issue green bonds, 50% of them probably didn't do too much with those bonds that was truly green, but they got the better interest rate. So you can look at it very black and white. Some of them did very good immediately, some did not. But then you take it to the next level, which is some of those firms that didn't really use the proceeds for anything that was tangible in sustainability, at least change the mindset within their company so that the next round of green bonds does tilt towards something more tangible and sustainable. So it's a complicated issue, and it's going to be an evolution. It's not going to be something that overnight, definitions are applied and everything fits within those definitions immediately. But I think we're heading in the right direction. There has to be a little flexibility at first, and then like a funnel, it gets to the point where everything is tight and flowing in the same direction. And I think we're going to get there. I think we're probably 5 to 10 years away from it being truly impactful in terms of definition. So cool. So now off to Lucas's.
Wow, so it's me. Okay. So I think we can roll right into, on the sustainability and good governance topic. So this has been an issue I've been harping on for a couple of years now. This is from E&E News. They need to be ready, unquote. Study warns of growing solar waste. So this is kind of a shocking story for some people, which I've been trying to bring some light to for many years. This is from David Iconogello from July 20th, E&E News reporter, that all these solar panels, believe it or not, these solar companies don't have a sustainable plan for what to do with these panels at the end of their life. And to me, this is just shocking. Like, how can we have a clean energy company that hasn't thought about a sustainable plan for their solar panels? So in the next few years, a lot of these solar panels, which we've been installing, are going to reach the end of their useful lives over the next decade. And so we need to recycle them. So we need to have a process for this. Some of these are gallium arsenic panels. Yes, that's the same arsenic that's toxic. And you can't just put that in a landfill because it'll leak into the groundwater supply. So this is not something we should take lightly. So I'm glad to see some light being brought to this. Could turn into a $15 billion industry of its own, just recycling panels. So we definitely gonna need to get on top of this. Solar needs to be a sustainable business of its own right. So there's no reason why we can't recycle these into new solar panels. That would be a fantastic example for companies that are not sustainable. So definitely want to bring light to this.
Yeah, this was a neat one to see, Lucas, and it quotes Garvin Heath, a scientist at the National Renewable Energy Lab here in Colorado, and it's nice to see him listed here. I knew him when I was at Excel, and he was doing some brilliant life cycle assessments then as well. Or when I was at Excel, sorry, I'm not sure what I said there. And so that was exciting, and you have a little Colorado connection in this article choice here. But yeah, I mean, this is so important to the full reputation of solar and to a complete transition. So I mean, I don't know if there's a reclamation fee or something that, has to fund, that has to be formed. It's hard, I think. And I wonder, in the United States, I feel like addressing recycling is harder here than it is in other parts of the world where they don't have any place to put stuff.
Right.
But we have a lot of space to put stuff, so we could end up with big piles of this stuff before we decided we had to do something about it. So
yeah, great story, Lucas. As someone who was witnessing a shale gas boom earlier, about 5-7 years ago in the Midwest, I was seeing all these downstream and midstream facilities getting built. And coming from someone who grew up in the Rust Belt, watching dilapidated steel mills collapse in on itself after 50 years of not being used, I kept seeing these facilities getting built. And I'm like, what's going to happen at the end of their useful life? Nobody wants to have those discussions because it's not in their job scope. I think governments should do a more proactive role when they green light a renewable project. There has to be an end game clearly defined about who's responsible at the end of useful life for what they're going to do with the materials once they're scrapped. And I think that's the only way to solve it, is to think about it and have that conversation up front. Nobody wants to do that, and people on every political side of the spectrum will simply say, well, that's going to hurt the project return. It's going to hurt the ability of doing this project in the first place. I disagree with that. I think if it becomes mandated, this is something that has to be addressed. So from a technology standpoint, I hope we work on better recycling technology. Like Kathryn said, we're far behind in this country, but I think it should be policy driven as well.
Yeah, so I think that was an important issue to bring up. My next two articles I wanted to pair together. So Arizona regulatory staff proposes 100% clean energy standard by 2050. This is from our friends at Utility Dive. Let's see if there's a date on here. Published July 22nd by Robert Walton. So this is great. I'm all for clean energy standards that are tough and rigorous. Wow, they have a new integrated resource planning process, which I love also. I'd like to see the details. I have my own ideas about IRP, so that's interesting. And actually, I was going to come out to be a little more critical on this, as I was critical of Washington State's 100% clean energy plan, because if you look at renewable resources in the US, both Washington State and Arizona are blessed with amazing renewable energy resources. In Arizona, mainly solar. They have a fantastic solar resource. And in my opinion, and I'm going to get tons of criticism for this, 100% clean energy is not enough for Arizona. Arizona needs to be producing more clean energy than they consume, and they need to be exporting it to states who aren't blessed with fantastic clean energy resource like Arizona is. So we need more transmission lines like we saw last week. We need more renewable energy coming out of states that are blessed with great renewable resource. So in my opinion, I'm horribly disappointed that this didn't go far enough, and I'm sure people are going to call me crazy, that I don't know what I'm talking about. You can't have 110%, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can, and you can export it. And states with great renewable resource should do that. And that ties with this GTM article. Sorry, I'll pull these together and then you guys can comment. This one from GTM, from Jeff St. John, July 14th. Utilities in the Southeast propose first regional grid balancing market. So this is exactly what I just described, that different states and different utilities need to get together and start moving renewable power back and forth, and they need to have a marketplace so they can do this. So that's exactly what they're doing in the Southeast. You'll see down here, they have a map of RTOs and ISOs, and you see this giant hole down here in the Southeast. So the Southeast kind of needs to get their act together. You know, if certain states have renewables and they want to ship it to other states and share this kind of geographic smoothing, which is critical, I think, also to renewables, you're going to have a marketplace or a mechanism to do that. And so this is great. So, you know, I'll be a little facetious here, but I just wish there was some kind of, you know, entity over the states, you know, that got them all together, like some federation of states. You know, I'm being a little, you know, I just wish we had something like that could coordinate the states together and keep their policy all coordinated and make this work. Can we get something like that? Some kind of federation?
Like Switzerland? I don't understand. No, that's a confederation. Never mind.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, okay, you guys can comment. I thought these were good to pair together.
Yeah, I mean, your expertise is greater than mine about the market considerations. But when I read the southeastern U.S. Market formation strategy, it made a lot of sense to start to get that set up now before Arizona can start pushing all this excess clean energy Lucas is going to make sure they have. Because I definitely think, get the market built so that it can happen pretty seamlessly, and they have a lot of examples to go from. So it feels like it should be able to get it done. When I thought maybe there was much ado about nothing in the Arizona headline, given what some of their utilities have already pledged to do, but I hadn't thought about it like you did about, couldn't they do more? And when you think about the whole country, and that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it like that. 100% seemed like all of it to me. So good point, Lucas.
Yeah, echoing Kathryn's thoughts. I'm as surprised as Kathryn. I love the idea. Maybe given the fact that we have a new trade agreement in place with Canada and Mexico, and I'm sad to say I don't know about power composition in Mexico, but why can't we be exporting electricity from Arizona to Mexico and help them with their sustainability and green economy and giving their grid a little bit more consistency? Again, I don't know much about the Mexican grid or their sources of power, but I suspect they, like the United States, could probably use a boost in getting more green energy implemented. So we can not only export it to other states, we can be exporting it to other countries. And maybe that falls into a better calculation on trade imbalance. So great point, Lucas, 100% with you. Go Arizona.
Yeah, and Mexico could definitely use the revenues, and Canada is flooded with hydropower. So yeah, definitely pro cross-border transmission flows, but we all know about the Champlain Hudson line and all the troubles with that and the political view of that. So
so now we definitely have to tell our viewers to go on YouTube and not the podcast, because Kathryn has a guest star.
I have a pirate stowaway. So this is Eva, my youngest daughter. Eva, say hi.
Hi. Hi. All right. Well done, Lucas. Well done.
Okay. Two more quick ones here, and then we'll call it a day. This one I just had to put up here because you people you're gonna cry. So Chevron is installing solar panels in their oil pumping fields because it's a cheaper supply of energy for their oil pumps. And so this just blew my mind. So yeah, solar is so good that even the oil companies are using it to pump oil. I mean, you can read the article. It's on Bloomberg Green by Robert Turtle from July 22nd. I suggest you look it up, but just my jaw hit the floor. This is just ridiculous.
Well, I'll comment really quick. I just remember being in the shale patch in the Marcellus and the Utica and seeing the bobbing donkeys that are installed after the rig is completed. And it's amazing. All the maintenance equipment or all the monitoring equipment on those pads were solar powered. So they're using solar power and it just shows that it's not just a cheap source, but it's a very convenient source of energy to power something. And this reminds me, I think ExxonMobil is building one of the largest solar farms in Texas, and it's really to get power to the Permian Basin for all the oil and gas development there. So again, we talk about renewables and bridge power and bridge energy, and the reality is we're not going to shut off the oil and gas industry overnight. And so anything we can do to help green the oil and gas industry, to Kathryn's point, is a win-win for all of us. And it kind of bridges us sustainably, not just from an environmental aspect, but from an economic aspect into the future. So, we can be more collaborative, and that's going to be a win-win for all of us.
Yeah, I think electrification of oil field operations is really good. And if they can do it with solar, I mean, California policy often seems to have lots of winding paths and potential loops involved. And maybe it sounds like there's a little bit of that here. I'm not sure. That's getting to some interesting financial benefits. But I mean, if they're able to have a better energy mix for their oil field operation than the state electric grid is, then it seems like it's one more advantage and one more use for solar. And that oil is going to come out anyway. It's already drilled and producing. So it didn't upset me as much as it upset you, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess I just found it shocking, but I mean, it makes perfect sense, and you're right. So,
You know what?
um,
This morning I was watching a barge on the Hudson River that comes up to these propane tanks nearby because my whole neighborhood is heated by propane, and this barge is incredibly loud, and it's using diesel motors to pump from the barge into these storage tanks. And I kept thinking to myself, in 10 years from now, that barge could be using electric motors that are not only going to be more efficient, but they're going to be quieter. And again, that creates, benefits in the whole NIMBY society that we live in. So, these are bridge solutions to a greater future. And I'm all for the integration of the green energy sources to help power existing fossil fuel generation. It's just a reality that we live in.
yeah, okay, and then I'll move on to my last one real quick here. The tit for tat between New Jersey and New York continues. So now we find out from windpowerengineering.com, this is by their staff from July 22nd, New Jersey is considering a solicitation of 2.4 gigawatts of offshore wind proposals. We all know how we started our last episode. So this is touche New York, right? So Governor Phil Murphy just had to push his, so they're not even like offering it, they're considering it, right? So it's just total tit for tat in the press. So this is just funny.
Well, it's better than governors, battling over their football teams or something, right? If they want to battle over who can do a bigger offshore, wind project, then all right.
And what's going to happen. Cuomo's going to stop one development from putting its last turbine in. They're going to wait for New Jersey to put their field in, and then Cuomo's going to make sure he has the largest wind turbine on the East Coast by putting in some like 15 megawatt wind turbine that hasn't even been designed yet, and he's going to put it right across from Liberty Island just to show Murphy who's the boss around here. So.
Just like that skyscraper that revealed the secret spire, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, it's 50 feet taller than we said.
That's right. Surprise.
Hey, by the way.
Yep.
Great stories this week. I think we kind of really hit the whole spectrum of, in different ways. So a lot of fun. And Kathryn, so just any closing thoughts? What's next for Mapleton and Sloan, and where do you want to go in next year or so?
Sure. Well, I think transportation electrification hopefully keeps me pretty busy here, but I think there's also some growing opportunity to work on this LDC carbon reduction strategy, and how do you, what do you do with this gas infrastructure that doesn't have a ready alternative, and in parts of this country that get really cold. So I'm working on some projects there and looking to grow business there. Is it renewable natural gas? Is it the strategic or beneficial electrification? And when is that appropriate? So it's pretty fun. Hopefully keeps me pretty busy. I'll let you know. Let me know when you have another opportunity. This was fun. I'd join you again. Practice my talk like a pirate shtick next time.
Well, our goals are maybe next year when the world opens up again, maybe some potential podcast studio space. So we'd have to have our sponsorship money fly you in from Denver just to do the podcast, so we can do it in person.
Perfect. I'll do it.
But, you're a great guest. Thank you for just keeping the bar so high in terms of the power and clarity and vision of our guest host. So we really appreciate that. We're Pirates of Clean Tech. This is episode 8. Thank you for everything to our listeners. Please keep the constructive criticism coming. And, I always have to do my little disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by Lucas and I are those of ourselves and no other organizations we're affiliated with. And Lucas, where should people go to get more information?
Yeah, so you can check us out on Twitter, Pirates of Clean Tech, right, on Twitter. And you can always comment or click like or click subscribe. Click the little alarm bell if you want to be notified when our new episodes get posted. And then you'll have it pop right up on your phone. It's the best thing. That's what you want. So
Fantastic. Well, I think, she didn't do it in the beginning, so I think we have to do one more year to get, we can't close the episode until we have that. But thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next week.
Arr.
Arr.
Well done. Touche, New Jersey. Touche.
Touche, New York. Oh, man.
Take care.